Hi, welcome back. And for those of you who weren't here earlier this afternoon, I'm Ben Nichols. I'm an Agile coach working at Santander UK. Before we start, could I ask that if you have any questions, please use the chat to ask them, and we will pick those up at the end of Arie's keynote. So for our next keynote speech, we have a very special guest, Arie Van Bennekum. Hi, Arie, are you there?
I'm there, yes.
Hi.
Hear me, can see me?
Yes, good to see you and hear you. We're very pleased and grateful to have you here with us today. Particularly pleasure for me as an Agile coach to have one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto talking at this conference. You are very welcome. So Arie is a pragmatist who embeds his pragmatism in structure, discipline and common sense from his early days in healthcare and military forces up to where he is today. This eventually led to him being one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto. And over the years, Arie has become an expert on agile transformations and business agility. Arie is working for Wemanity as a thought leader, and within Wemanity, responsible for international transformations across the globe and works in an international team to get this done. Next to his work in agile transformations, Arie lectured at Rotterdam University for 20 years, Amsterdam for 7, and Utrecht for 3 years on topics such as agile project management, business value and agile transformations. He developed the Agile Transformation Framework, IATM, and his intellectual property is to be found at www.integratedagile.com and www.arievanbennekum.com. His first book is about how to handle change and objectives as an individual, and his second book is Delivering Business Value, and it's coming out soon. This afternoon, the topic of his talk is, do you really manage to deliver business value? Over to you, Arie.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for the lovely introduction. Thank you so much. The second book, actually, today, I have the blisters on my fingers because I'm typing, and this month I want to have all the content and all the illustrations. I want to have it finished. And also, the topic of today, are you really capable of delivering business value, is about this, right? It's very pragmatic. This is how we do things. I'm not talking from behind the desk, having been thinking about it. This is just what you get from me, about doing it, right? This is how I've done it. I will give you a little introduction of myself. I know I'm talking to the DevOps community. I was not too long ago, a couple of months ago, I was in a conversation with Patrick Dubois. He's I think one of the world leading people when it comes to DevOps. And we were together in a sort of a panel that was recorded because of 20 years of Agile Manifesto. And we had a very, very similar conclusion, right? It's all the same kind of thinking. And it's also about, finding the same purpose, the business value. And I want to give you a little bit of introduction. Ben already said, right, healthcare, military forces takes away that Agile is not about you can do whatever you like. Agile is about quality and discipline of your work, working in a team and having a shared responsibility, right? And that's DevOps the same. How can we get to the value? My motivation to start working in a different way dates from 1994 when I was part of a project with like 30 people in a governmental organization in the Netherlands, the Dutch IRS, the tax office, where millions, the project I was in, it was just killed right away after 6-7 months without even nobody ever knowing why. And for me, that was a reason to say, okay, I never want to work in this very traditional waterfall kind of way again. I don't want to be responsible for having, being part of spending public money and not bringing any return on it. So my driver is on the business value. So you have to imagine that it's 1994 and I start working in a different way. And all I want is how can I deliver business value? That's for me so important. How can I get there? And at that moment in time, we said something like, if you go into a way of working, your delivery should be within 6 months, no later, because the world is subject to change, technology and innovation. The pace of innovation is going very fast, will most likely only increase, never slow down again. So you need to be able to deliver in shorter timelines than we are used to. That last waterfall project that I was talking about, that I was part of, from November 1993 to May 1994. That was had a horizon of delivery. I think it was 2 or 3 years. I don't even remember anymore. Ridiculous, completely insane. If you see, the pace of change in the law in the Netherlands, it's impossible to have that kind of working, that way of working. So my focusing was on business value. So I always have done this, and I'm very happy to say that my people, that the clients that I work with, the client was really happy all the time, and that's good. So I want to take you down that road, because I see so many organizations, they do agile and then they start doing DevOps, and in the end, having a happy client, and really getting the benefits of this way of working is not always there. I was contacted by a couple of academic people from, I think they were from India, and they said, Arie, are you aware of the fact that, agile transformations most of the time are, fail? Because people, that's what organizations, they want to get the benefits of it, right? And I'm always wondering how come, why? Because for me, agile is so simple, right? How the whole concept of thinking and the mindset, the way to do is, but if you don't adopt it, you get into trouble. So I want to try today to give you some very practical, hands-on tips and tricks. Okay, if you do this, then you get an improvement on the business value. If you are delivering already perfect business value, don't listen to me, go have a beer or a wine. But if you think, okay, we can have some improvements in our team and in our deliveries, great. Then maybe I can help you today. That's my focus, right? So the business value. And what is business value? It's not just delivering business value, but it's also having it there on time. I think you cannot deliver value if you're delivering late. Then you're late with the value and you don't have the value, right? And today where we are, it means that you deliver the right stuff, working properly, right, at the shortest possible timeline. I always say, if you're late, don't worry. Competition will be on time. And the competition today is from all over the world. And that competition is facilitated by the same technology that forces into continuous innovation, like we are. And that technology is not only offering the competition to come from all over the globe and do what you do, so they can become competition. But that same technology is also disrupting business models. And that means that as an organization, that the way you make your money today can be, obsolete 3 months from now. And I know that people think, oh, that's maybe for other businesses, but it's not for us. I remember in the telecommunication industry that and it's already 12 years ago, I think, that when the moment WhatsApp came to the market, at least in the Netherlands, I don't know about other parts of the globe, but at least in the Netherlands, the number one telecommunication provider, the biggest one, was pushed out of the market, almost pushed out on the edge of bankruptcy in just 3 months. And this is a company with, at the time, 14,000 people, if I'm correct. WhatsApp, like what? 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 people. And they're almost killing the business model because they were making, at that moment in time, money with old school text messages. Like 10 years before, in the late 90s, they were making money by selling phone call minutes. 10 years later, it was old school text messages, then WhatsApp and other stuff came in, and they were selling internet access. And at the moment, they are revamping their business models again. Most of you, I don't know if you are from Santander yourself, but most of you are from the fintech industry. And we know the fintech is changing as well, continuously, not just 3 years ago, no, continuously. Where I live in the beautiful Dutch countryside, windmills and black and white cows running around. In my village, 17,000 people, 10 years ago, we had 6 bank offices. At this moment in time, we do not have a bank office anymore, right? Things change. And if you don't keep up, you become obsolete as an organization, right? That's where we need to go. So we need to understand this. Now, what I want to make on a flip chart here, I want to explain to you, when we wrote the manifesto, the Agile Manifesto, what were we focusing on? Because I hear all the myths and all the legends, and then the Agile transformation. It's because Agile working is for me about communication, right? and improving that one. But the point is that if you don't understand what is needed below this, you will keep a lot of old habits in place, and those old habits will hinder you from getting the benefits of working agile and DevOps, to get that business value as fast as possible to the market. If I make a very simple drawing, and I do this very regularly, right? Because I see so many organizations that do agile and or DevOps, and they keep on struggling, right? That's what happens. So, people talk to the client. Here's a client right here, and they make a document out of this. And look what's going on, right? This thing, and they make another document out of it. And you can say, this is the analyst, this is maybe a functional designer. My last waterfall project, I was a technical designer. Right, here you go. And I made another document, and that document went to someone that I never met, that I never saw, right? To get you an idea. And the big problem in this way of working is, first of all, it's extremely inefficient. Because we have in this process, we send it out, we have toll gates, we have acceptance moment, and we get rework, right? This is very inefficient. You lose a lot of time. But also we have this remote and written communication where you get, the moment that people take a document in, they start making interpretations and assumptions, right? And interpretations and assumptions, the big problem is they are wrong. So by the time you go down this line, what you see is, you stack misunderstandings on misunderstandings, which is seriously a problem. So you have, basically we deliver the wrong stuff. Very often, right? By the fact that we create misunderstandings. And what happens in those two situations, here we lose time, and here we need rework, and both of them are a delay. And I always say, if you ever ask me, I'm one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto. I didn't write, the DevOps publication. But if you do Agile, you do it for one reason only, avoiding delay of delivering your business value. And too often, we still see, the via communication. We don't talk to each other. We talk to each other via documents or via other people and that kind of stuff. And I want to talk with you about this one, right? And if you look at this one, what I very often see as a solution, and this is really a problem, is that we say, okay, what we have here, we have the business, we have here developers, and I don't care who the business is, and I don't care what the developers make, because this can be software, but it can even be, when people do a recruitment campaign, as I run them in an agile way at client sites, right? But if we put this PO here in the middle, what you get is that the business talks to the PO talks to the team talks back to the PO, and these talk back to the business. So we have, 1, 2, 3, 4 times interpretations and assumptions, and we have the same problem again. Where does this come from, and how do you solve it, right? Again, if you look at that waterfall, we said, okay, we have those misunderstandings and we have those inefficiencies. And instead of having the waterfall, going step by step, handing over to other people, what we have to do is we have to bring those disciplines. I don't say every discipline has to be a different person. It's not at all even. We need people together to be able to do the job, no matter who does what. You need the people together at the same time. So what we are looking for is getting away from that remote and written communication. What we are looking for is getting away from the sequential process where one team makes something, hands it over to someone else, handing it over to someone else. And that's what you want to avoid. And too often when one of the things that always is, it baffles me when I hear it. When people say, for example, things like, oh, we go to do an agile transformation, but we do the IT first and then the business. And I always think, what the fuck? You do this for business value. So how in the world can you do an agile transformation on the IT without the business and then later on doing the business? That doesn't make any sense. But the point is, what does make sense, right? Because that's the next question. So what we need to focus on is making sure, and I want to give you one line. I love one-liners. The one-liner that I mean in this case is get your information at the source. So if we have people who make something, and we have people who need something. They should talk to the people who make it and to sit together at the table. And not just at the beginning of a sprint in a refinement, and then at the end of a sprint for a demo. No, continuously. The biggest mistake we can make is think that a demo is an acceptance meeting. And it's bollocks. And you know why? Every one of you knows. Everybody knows. You know what the problem is with an acceptance meeting? The biggest problem is that people don't accept. And then you have rework to do, and you have a delay. And that's the one thing that you want to avoid. So the question is, how can I avoid delay? And the number one is getting information at the source. People together. Here are people who need a solution to create value in the organization. Here are people who know how to make that solution. So if they make it and they use it, together, we can create the value, because the moment that you go into production, the value is not yet there. That's the moment that you start generating the value, right? That's where we need to go. So we have to get to that face-to-face communication. And the point is, what we see very often, if we go into a sprint like this, let's say that we do 2-week sprint, what people will do is, they will do a refinement here and they will do the demo here. And of course, that doesn't work. Because it's like, you're going to spend a whole lot of money on making a beautiful tailored suit for you. And you go once, they take the measurements, and then, after 3 weeks, you come and the suit is finished. No, if you go in London and you go to that, I don't forgot the name, but there's this beautiful street where all those tailors are. And if you want a suit and you go there for the first time, you have to come regular time so they can check that it's perfectly fitting. And that's what fast feedback pays off. So you need to have the people who need a solution and people who make the solution together. So the people who need the solution can check, is this really bringing the value that I need? Is this really the functionality and the solution that will help me running my business in a better way so I can get to that value? And that means that regularly, I need to have moments where I check in, like going to the tailor and having that suit made. And that means being there. That means looking at it, prototyping or simulation, whatever you call it, right? Because we have the developers and we have the business, and then we have even other people, other stakeholders that can stop the team, that can reject what the team has made. Maybe the legal department or the communication department, right? And they also need to be able to give the feedback so that during that sprint, the team can converge to the best possible solution, right? That's what we're looking for. That way of working is not even in organizations where I go, I see feature teams and development teams, and then we do testing. And I understand that you cannot be perfect in a week, but the dot on the horizon needs to be that continuous improvement to get there. I like to repeat a phrase from, I think it was from Jeff Sutherland that I saw somewhere on Instagram or Twitter. I don't know where I saw it happen. And I like to repeat that quote from him. If you don't deliver to production at the end of a sprint, you have a sprint fail, period. And that's what it is. When we wrote the manifesto, it was about making sure at the end of that little time box, it's ready. And maybe you don't go to production because you have a specific date for going live, because a law that has to become activated or whatever. Fine, great. But at the end of the sprint, you put it on the shelf, and either it's in production or you only have to put it in production, and that's it. Nothing else. Nothing else. And if you are going in your own way of working, I can imagine that it's not there right away. Of course not. No technology. I expect to have a lot of IT people here in the group. We know that technology can be really in the way. And especially when you are in old financial institutes, you have situations where you have a lot of legacy, and that takes time to migrate. But that means that you need to migrate, and you don't give in to, it's technically very difficult, so let's not do it. No, the fact that it's difficult doesn't mean that you don't do it, right? Because the business needs it. That's why the business needs it. That's why we do it. I'm a software developer by origin myself. We are there because the business needs us, right? If the business wouldn't need us, I would not have a job. You would not have a job. We're there to serve the business. And what we are doing now is together with the business in a shared responsibility, making the team that is able to deliver that solution that will bring the value after go live. Now, the question is, how do you do this, right? How do you get there? So, okay, we have those regular sessions with all the stakeholders, but this is a different way of working. You have to transform to this way of the working. And of course, you cannot do without tools for testing and integration and deployment. You can see that you need this, but if the mindset is not there, forget about it. A fool with a tool is still a fool. Very simple, right? So the question is, how can you make this happen? And as I said in the intro, just after Ben introduced me, I was actually writing because I'm finalizing my second book on how to bring business value from agnostic agile working, right? So to bring everything together. And what you do is, if you want to work like this, you make such a change that you need to prepare that way of working. Otherwise, people will not be able to follow you because they're not used to it. They are not allowed by managers. They are not allowed by, because they are not having the experience or the routine to collaborate with people in a shared responsibility from this perspective. The word that I like to use is what I call an ecosystem. You have to create sort of an ecosystem in which the team can operate. But to make that happen, you need to understand that agile working itself, the interaction part of agile working and where you generate the value, when we are working as one, agile working itself is, for me, very simple. It's about having the right people at the right time talking about the right stuff. That's what we do, whether it's a daily or a retro or it's a heartbeat, one of those sessions here. It's not complicated. The point is, the complication comes from the moment that you look at, okay, if I do this daily, if I do this retro, if I do this heartbeat, what do I need to make that successful? And now we get into the complicated shit, because that means that we need to create the preconditions. Preconditions, for example, change the standards on documentation, change the perception of what documentation is and or not. Because a lot of people think in Agile we don't document, which is also not true, but we document in a completely different way, a very efficient way. Okay, can we perceive this one as documentation? Because we always think that documentation is sort of MS Word, Excel, maybe PowerPoint, right? But there are different ways of documentation, different ways of decision making, different ways of people taking on work, the way people get work, the way people deliver work. It's all different. That's what we need to facilitate. And to make that happen, we need to create an ecosystem together to make that happen. And that's not easy, because and this is also the reason why a lot of organizations fall back into sequential working, where they do feature development and features and then development and then this and then that, the steps. Why? If we go into agile working as a whole, as a group in the shared responsibility, we're not used to do this, right? So you don't have the experience to do something. Normally when things go wrong, instantly you take a solution because you've done this before, you got the experience. Okay, so I can do this and it helps. But now you're going into this way of working. You never done that before and it doesn't work. So what do I do? What do I do? And people start implementing solutions from the past. And that's where you get, after going into sort of a transformation, you get all the sequential waterfalls activities back, right? That's what you see. I call it innovating backward. Now that responsibility, right, to make sure that you don't innovate backward, but that you innovate forward and that you go focus on business value, how can I get there, is heavily relying on the interaction and having people being able to do the right things, being empowered to do the right things. And then in this way of working, I always say that the leadership is the essential, and the leadership on the detailed level, right, in the little teams, leadership, maybe scrum masters, product owners, or whatever you call them, leading a team, but also on the organizational level, high up the board, everybody. And why? It's very simple. If you want to work in this new way, we know that, like, what, 5 to 10% people is maybe open to change, and the rest of the people is either against or at least looking at other people. So how can they be motivated? By somebody who role models, right? So the role modeling, how do you bring work into a team? How do you have this accepted? All those things changing, because the second one is role modeling. The first one is role modeling, of course, by leaders in the organization, so people can more easily adopt. But the second one is that you're going to do things in a different way. Most of the time, people in teams are not allowed to decide on to change the way we work. Well, then you need people from the management level or hierarchy level say, okay, we can make that change. Because in agile work, every team decides how they work themselves, right? So that's where but you need to be able to get into that modus, right? When you're connected to other teams, okay, then you need to align, of course. But in the team, people decide how they work in the team themselves, nobody else. But at the old schools, and very often in so-called agile environments, you see this still going on, right? That people are looking at other people and facilitate the change. So that's number 2. So 1 is role modeling, 2 is facilitating change. And then number 3, I was just referring to that. That's the problem. When you see a team struggle in this new way of working, the business doesn't show up, or technology is maybe not really helping in the way we do the delivery, those kind of things. What do you do with this? How does it work, right? How do you take it on? And then you need to what I call innovate forward. You have to find within the values and the principles of Agile and DevOps, you have to say, okay, what can we do to solve this problem and get to a better delivery? So the leadership needs to have an active role in role modeling Agile working for adoption, facilitating the change, so we really can have the teams working the way they should, and also getting other parts of the organization working in that shared responsibility with each other, right? That's a change in the collaboration modus. And then, of course, when things not going so well, we need to find a way to make sure that we sustain that change and we find solutions innovating forward, within the new concept of working that we have. When it comes to delivering that business value, the session here in the middle is essential. And this one, the drawing that I made here, where the poor PO is in the middle, this one doesn't work. And basically because you have via communication, which is inefficient, will cost time, and already 1, 2, 3, 4 times interpretations and assumptions. And I'm back to square one, where I have a lot of misunderstandings. This is why a lot of POs are struggling and a lot of businesses are still unhappy. I am at the moment confronted with organizations that said, we are going to transform back to waterfall because Agile doesn't work. And I will say, Agile does work, but maybe you didn't really do Agile, because it's so difficult to get out of those old ways of thinking. Now, if you want to have one very specific, I want to make a drawing for you, one very specific tip that I can give you that will really help you to understand, you ask yourself always the question, very simple question. If I am a team and I am making someone, always the question is, who can stop me? So if I have a team, okay, I can say, okay, I can make a list, and I'm not talking about individual people, but about roles in the organization. So I'm making a solution for the business. So who can stop me from go live? That business, of course. That business can stop me because that business can say, okay, what you have made is not working properly. That's not what I need. It's not giving the value. We checked it out. Okay, so the business, that's one. But very often we forget that there are more. For example, in my line of work, in my personal practice, what I experienced a lot was I had always to deal with legal departments. Because if I made a new solution, awesome and great, but if the legal department didn't approve up front, what would happen was that I couldn't go live because they had that kind of power and authority in the organization. I had another one that was really always strong, which is the communication department, up to the level, and you can talk about, okay, is it relevant or not, but it happened to me. They say, okay, if you don't use the right colors from the house style, you're not going live, and they could stop us. So how do you do this? And what you need to understand is that these are just 2 examples. I had situations, so this is the business, I call those the non-functional standards because the legal is for everyone the same, right? And communication standards are for everybody the same, but they have this power. And I would go into this session. So you have your refinement at the beginning of your sprint. Here you have your last one. And I would make this kind of working where I have, and this is really iterating, right? Now we're iterating. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. And the last one I would do in the morning. And at the end of the day, we would finalize the work. That means that everyone, I would have, and this, you have to set that ecosystem, right? But I would have people from the business, people from the non-functional standards. I would have in from the refinement. And then we would show what we have made, get the feedback. And the next time they would see the feedback in. And the next time they would see the feedback in. So by the time you're getting at the end of the sprint, what will happen is that you converge to acceptance. You don't accept, no, you build acceptance during your sprint. And instead of having those people testing what the team has made, because that's very often what it's meant. You do something and I'll tell you if it's right or wrong, right? That's how they would behave. Now we say, hey, we bring you together in a shared responsibility where we have people who develop, right? And those developers, they will, for the business, make a solution that brings value. And then when the developers make stuff, the business people have the responsibility to make sure that at the end of the sprint, they have given the feedback in such a way that the requirements that we are making here are according to their functional criteria to bring the value that we're looking for. And the legal people are participating in such a way that it's their responsibility to give the feedback in such a way that by the end, here we are meeting the legal criteria, we are, etc., etc. And then you converge, then you build acceptance. Of course, right, as I said, it's based on a new way of working. That way of collaboration, especially in a shared responsibility, is for a lot of people new. Very, very often it's us and them, and especially in the old school way where we have business developers and the PO in the middle, we keep that, right? Okay, so we have business and developers. Okay, they will make something for us, and this person in the middle, they will check it for us. No, of course not. That's exactly what we didn't look for when we wrote the Agile Manifesto. That's exactly, that doesn't bring the value to the business by avoiding the delay to the maximum as possible. Now, very often, and this is something that I want to give for all of you, very often people say, hey, Arie, this is absolutely awesome. If we do this, it really helps. But, and there we go, right? The but. Yeah, but, it doesn't match our culture. Or in our organization, it doesn't work like this. Or those kind of things. When it comes to new ways of working, you have to understand that you cannot change other people. And if you are doing a one-off delivery, basically what I'm writing my book for at the moment, you build that ecosystem for that team at that moment, or when it's done, might even disassemble the team, right? But when you do a transformation, you build those kind of ecosystems permanently, right? And it's really, you bring the deep change, and you have to stick together to understand why you do it. So I said, avoiding delay. That ecosystem, creating that is essential. If you don't have that ecosystem, so my second tip is create that ecosystem before you get into your delivery sprints. If you are struggling right now, at the moment, just sit down with your team tomorrow and say, okay, guys, let's ask the question. We are struggling to have a happy client. We are struggling to deliver on time. We are struggling to, okay, so what is going on? And sit down and say, okay, what is potentially helping us? And especially on the things like the business value, the heartbeat, that session here where you have all the stakeholders is going to help you out. If you have the people identified, so potentially you would be able to do the heartbeat, but for example, they don't show up. Obviously, your ecosystem is not working. So what can you do to make that ecosystem working? And what I like to do myself is this. And it's something that comes back, when we wrote the Agile Manifesto, I was representing DSDM, right? We had 13 different methodologies represented the day we wrote them, and the weekend we wrote the manifesto. So we have people from the business, right? The sponsor here. And I use this one a lot. We have Someone can oversee the wide area of the solution. And we have people who can see, I call it business ambassadors, who can see specific areas of the solution. So those are the business people. Then I would have people from the non-functional standards, people who develop, so people who work on the solution. Here we have what I call basically an analyst or the PO, helping to write the business people to make the story. And here we have those people from the non-functional standards, and here we have developers and testers, right? This is how I like to work. And then, of course, everybody knows, we have Scrum Masters here, and we have Agile Delivery Managers or Release Train Engineers, I don't care how you call them. Right, here we go. So this is, and I had those teams. I had 6 or 7 of those teams. So working, the largest one I had was 14 teams working in parallel, guided by one team. So here. And then I always say, okay, if I want to avoid that delay, if I want to get that fast feedback in such a way that at the end of every sprint, that I know that I have built the acceptance, that I am there, that is good enough. You just do the line here. And that's what I say to the people, right, when they struggle, because too often I see people struggling and they are having unhappy clients, and clients bring in, changes all the time and they don't know how to handle it. For the heartbeat, this is the group of people, because now this one can be out of it, right? Those are here for every team. So 1, 2, 3, you have your separate heartbeats, and they take only half an hour or 45 minutes every 2 or 3 days. And that will help you to converge to that value. And when I'm struggling and I'm not able to go to production at the end, I just ask myself, okay, who do I miss? Do I miss someone here? Do I miss someone here? Do I miss someone here? On the functionality side, on the non-functionality side, do I miss someone? And if so, where do I get it? So I use this, that's tip number 3, right? I use this as my tool of analysis, because if I know this, I know who should be in my ecosystem. Then I have to set my ecosystem and agree on how to work. And then I use those heartbeats to have the essential people, when it comes to business value, together. And of course, we all know that, here we have on the daily, per team, you have your own daily, you have your own part of the backlog that you're working on. And now we can go live. And not only we can go live, but what also happens in this way of working, that I have one team for software development. I have maybe 2 teams for software development, but I have also a team for auditing. I have a team for marketing communication. I have a team. So I have different disciplines working on the same backlog, because if I make a new solution and my software is developed very fast, but my marketing team is not up to speed, my solution is late to the market, right? I can't have this. You need to do the full delivery. That's when you get the business value, right? You need to do full delivery. That's where you need to go. And getting to the culture, I know this is different. Maybe you've never done this. Maybe you do. I hope so. But don't blame the culture. Because when you look at culture, culture is, what I like to say, is just a group of people sharing habits. And we cannot change other people. We can only change ourselves, right? So if you're an agile coach, for example, or a DevOps coach, if you want to make people change, forget it. You can make people do other things, but the moment that you leave, they will do what they think they should do, right? Or what they like most or whatever. But the moment that people really, internalize that new way of working and they adopt it themselves, there you go, right? Then you have to change. If you have a group of people doing that in cohesion, then all of a sudden I have a transformation. And that's where we need to go. And you can do that transformation one-off, because you do one delivery, because that's a mini transformation that you do. You create that ecosystem. And when you do a real transformation, a full transformation, okay, you do the same thing, but then you sustain it and you keep it. When I look back, at when I did my commercial deliveries, I think my last deliveries were like 8-9 years ago. And I still do commercial deliveries, but they're always agile transformations at the moment. But if you look at those commercial deliveries, when I was having this role, right, or people having this role, the one and only thing that you were spending 50% or more of the time on was making sure that the people were in the right sessions, that the people were in the heartbeat, that the people were in the retro, and the people were in the daily. People are not used to do this, and they will say, oh, I have this heartbeat, but I'm so busy. I'm not in the daily today because I'm so busy. And people don't understand that if you don't go to a daily. You mess up your team process. If you don't show up in a heartbeat and you come 2 days later with feedback on what was made 2 heartbeats ago, you disrupt the team process, you cause delay, right? This is where the work happens. That's what we need to understand. And in that process, there is a continuous way of improving and changing. That's what we need to understand as well. And I was in a client site somewhere in Central Europe, and I saw, painted on walls, very big letters. I saw painted on a wall a very beautiful statement, and it was a perfect is not a state. Being perfect is not a state. Being perfect is an ambition. To reach your ambition, you need to change a lot. So perfect people change a lot. Now, if you replace perfect by agile, and you can say, being agile is not a state. Being agile is an ambition. To reach your ambition, you need to change a lot. So agile people change a lot. But now we're going back to the same old problem. And that problem is that we don't like change. And in the past, everything was exactly pre-described. What to do and who we are, and the career path was all made. And now we're going into this volatile way of working, where in the team we can decide, I'm all of a sudden having a T-shaped profile. I have to do at least half of the tasks in the definition of done. Okay, so that kind of thinking, and I choose myself which tasks that I want to learn to do because I don't have to do everything. That way of thinking is different. And in a lot of organizations, we still have predefined roles. And we make roles individuals. What you don't want in this way of working. You don't want to have individual dependencies. So teams that have one person who is Scrum Master, bullshit. Sorry, man. I can understand. In your transformation process, this is where you start. But being Scrum Master is just a role. And that role needs to be covered by at least 2 people or more. Because otherwise, what happens if the Scrum Master breaks a leg? But what do you do, right? So same thing with analysis and testing and developing and making test scripts and all those things need to be able, we have more than one person. We need more than one person to do this. And that's the same thing on the business side. So we need to create that ecosystem in such a way that we get out of individual dependencies and that we know that we have an ecosystem where we have the best possible knowledge on the need and on the development side, and we bring that together. And here we go, right? And in the Agile Manifesto, it's the first principle, I think. No, it's the 6th principle, face-to-face communication is the best way to convey information. And we forget this. And I'm just going to ask you, how often do you guys still send documents up and down? Right? Remember, this heartbeat is essential. The heartbeat is essential. You're at the source, talking to the business, and they are co-responsible for delivering that value item, right? That's what it's not you as a developer. No, it's together doing this. To be able to work in that heartbeat, you need to create the ecosystem, and we are aligned on how to work. When do we do the heartbeats and when and where? And that people are committed to be there. And then, of course, who are those people? And then you can use this model. It's okay. Do I have a gap? If people have problems in working, I'll just draw this one on a flip chart and I ask, okay, do we have everyone? And then you see the gaps and we know, right? Delivering that real business value is so possible. I've done it literally from the early days in 1995. I did my first pilot in 1994. That heartbeat has always been the core of my work. This is the center of my universe. And this is why I always have been able to have happy clients, to make sure that I deliver. The moments that I was struggling, I knew, tip number 4, I knew that I messed up in one of, I call them the rituals, one of the agile rituals. Most of the time I mess up in the heartbeat, not having the right people. And I call them rituals. Recently somebody said to me, oh, Arie, you used the wrong word. It's a ritual. A ritual is something that you do repetitively because it's part of a culture. I said, spot on, man, spot on. That's what it is. We do agile rituals for this reason, and we need to be there. That's where the work happens. So in between you do the production, but the thinking, the cognitive part is there, right? That's what you do. My last line was about don't blame the culture, because the culture is built of individuals. It's you, and that about agile people change a lot. That's what it is, and I can only encourage you to adopt that. I think it's the number one characteristic of Agile and DevOps people is to listen to learn instead of listen to criticize. Agile evolved, and it led also to DevOps, but it evolved from people who tried something different, shared their lessons learned from each other, and from there move forward. Instead of saying, oh, it doesn't suit our culture. Oh, no, it's really complicated. Let's not do it. Oh, it went wrong the first time. No, it means you're being persistent because the old way of working is not helping anymore. We know the waterfall is inefficient, leading to misunderstandings. And also we have a lot of problems with the quality because of the way the waterfall works with all the testing at the end. So what I would like to give you, if you want to go into the delivery of that value, is, if you want to give it to one line, is talk to the business. Don't talk to someone who talks to the business. No, talk to the business, because then you will be able to get the value and then you will be able to deliver it. I think I should stop here. Maybe we can get some questions. Ben, are you moderating?
Yeah. Hi, Arie. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. That was so inspiring. Some great takeaways from there. Loved it. Couple of key points for me was the where the suits are made on Savile Row.
Savile Row, yeah, that's
Savile
the one.
Row, yeah.
Yeah.
Get those customer needs, get that early iteration, fast feedback, prototype, through to delivering value to the customer. Love that. And people who need the solution sat with the people who create it. Let's not have the product owner as the intermediary sat between the delivery team and the business.
Exactly.
Love it. So we're a little tight for time, Arie, but had a great question that came through from Loretta. So her question is, what would be your suggestion when the resistance of creating that ecosystem comes from higher levels that the teams are not able to reach?
I have a very simple answer to that one, Loretta. Physical violence. It always helps. No. I think you have. I mentioned the leadership for a reason, right? This is the problem, and very often people on higher hierarchy levels, they expect teams, to do agile and deliver magic or so. But what they need to understand is you are doing this together. This is why I call it an ecosystem, and they have their role in it. So it needs ugly people, I think, Ben, like you and me, to talk to those leadership people to get some sense in them and get the realistic. Agile is underestimated. It's a deep, disruptive change, and it needs support from the higher levels. And if you have to do without it, it's very difficult. So you have to work on that. Spend time on it before you even get into your delivery sprints.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. And we're just going to sneak in one other question
Sure.
as well, just at the edge, from Dayton, who says, what do you suggest to increase the commitment in the team and in the whole organization?
Commitment to the work to be done, or commitment in working agile. People don't like change. So if I take the first one into working agile and start doing this, I always like to ask people, because most people are resisting, right? Maybe not out in the open, but deeply, they're not like very, very happy. They're reluctant, let me put it this way. So I will always say to them, and also to people who say no out in the open, okay, it's not a question, we're going to do this, but can I ask you to join us as a team for example, 2 times 2 weeks, and then we see what happens. So you can taste, because you never done it. And then, of course, you need a good Scrum Master or a good Agile delivery manager or a good Agile coach to make that happen, right? But that's what I ask. I invite people to join. Second, a recommendation I give, if you have a team and in a team you have someone who's really resisting, focus on it, isolate the problem, but don't spend all your time on the naysayers, because then you leave out all the other yaysayers and they're waiting for you, right? Because they want to, but they don't know exactly how, and this is where they need you. So don't forget to give them time as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Arie. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and congratulations on a brilliant keynote talk. So with respect to for the person that's coming on for the next keynote, we're going to say goodbye to you. We'll have a quick video and then we'll be on to our final keynote speaker.
Yeah, so one last thing, Ben. Can I ask people if they want to just connect with me on LinkedIn? And very often I'm very fast in the chat with answering questions about their job and stuff. Okay.
I'm on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.